South Africa's ruling party, the African National Congress, has suspended the country's former president, Jacob Zuma. Announcing the decision, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mabulala declared that Zuma and others whose conduct is in conflict with their values and principles will find themselves outside the party.
The NEC concluded that exceptional circumstances exist to justify and warrant an immediate decision to suspend former ANC President Jacob Zuma in line with Rule 25.60. The NEC took note of the announcement by former ANC President Jacob Zuma on 16 December 2023. He announced that he will be campaigning for another political party and further launched a series of vitriolic attacks against the ANC and its leadership. The formation of MK Party is not an accident. It is a deliberate attempt to use the proud history of armed struggle against the apartheid regime to lend credibility to what is a blatantly counter-revolutionary agenda. Zuma and others whose conduct is in conflict with our values and principles will find themselves outside the African National Congress. The JZ Party project aims to cast doubt on our entire constitutional democracy. In this regard, in assuming this reactionary public posture, former President Zuma is actively asserting himself as the figurehead of counter-revolution in South Africa.
Well, Arise analyst Mxolisi Mansangon joins us now from South Africa in order to discuss the preparations for the South African presidential election, also this suspension of former President Jacob Zuma by ANC, and exactly why Zuma is not supporting President Ramaphosa's re-election bid. Good to see you, Mxolisi. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. How is this going to affect the ANC's chances in the upcoming elections, and how are South Africans taking this suspension?
Look, it's interesting that you ask that question because this is hot off the heels of that statement that was made by the president of the ANC as well as president of the country, President Cyril Ramaphosa, who actually came out to say that Zuma taking a decision to start his own party will not have a bearing or an impact in how the ruling party will do in the upcoming polls. He said, well, people have learned to come and go with the ruling party, and whenever they decide to go or branch out into new political parties, they really have never made too much of an issue out of it, saying that they wish him well as well in his new endeavor as a political party leader, seeing that it's a first that someone branches out of the ANC, particularly from being a president in the ANC, to start their own political party. The president said this will have no impact in how the ANC will do in the upcoming polls. So it's really going to be interesting to see how this is going to move, because just before we got into this conversation as well, we heard the Secretary General of the ruling party, Fikile Mbalula, going at odds to explain that, they've taken a decision to suspend the former president from the ANC because, they felt that he was going against some of the policies of the ruling party. And they've also added to that statement that the ANC would also be challenging the use of the Umkhonto weSizwe, which is the name for Zuma's new political party. They'll be taking it to court because this is essentially a name or an extension of the arm of the military veterans arm of the ruling party, and they feel that they own the trademark. So it's going to be interesting to first of all see how this is going to play out in the courts, particularly looking at how, the former president president has said that he will be standing by that name. And interestingly enough, as we also have this conversation, we saw the former president as well starting campaigning for the upcoming elections. He started in KZN this past weekend. I must say that there were a lot of people there in attendance, and there are a lot of people who genuinely feel that the former president's party really speaks to their hopes, dreams, and aspirations as South Africans. And looking at how he's using, trying to get South Africans out of poverty as his campaigning ticket to a certain extent, he's got the support of most people here in the country, and people are coming out to say that it's now time for change. It's now time for an alternative that will speak to their hopes, dreams, and aspirations as ordinary South Africans. And also, this also comes at a very interesting time as the ANC itself, as well as how conversations are swaying towards the fact that we'll never have one ruling party in the country. Analysts are pointing to the fact that we'll be seeing more coalition governments post the elections this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how the playing field is going to be leveled, especially as we see more political parties come into the fold ahead of these all-important elections.
Well, talking about coalitions, former ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule also formed another party, the African Congress for Transformation, following his own expulsion from the ANC. What impact is this likely to have on the ANC's chances in the upcoming election? Could Magashule and Zuma perhaps work together to defeat the ANC?
Well, those were some of the talks that were being had on the ground. Whether the two would be collaborating is another story. And also, they were not able to really come out and tell us outright whether they would be collaborating after the elections or before the elections, as a matter of fact. But to also answer your question, we've heard how the ruling party has said that its former leaders moving to start their own political party will have no impact or bearing in its performance in the upcoming elections. And also, this is also at a time where there's a sense of frustration on the ground by South Africans. There's a sense of despondency on the ground by most South Africans who would come out to say that they need an alternative that would seek to, offer them something that is closest to their hopes, dreams, and aspirations as South Africans. I mean, South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the world as we're having this conversation. So when we're having such a high rate of unemployment in the country, so it's greater conversations that are being had now by ordinary South Africans on the ground to say that they're looking at an alternative. So whether or not those political parties that are surfacing right now as we build up to those all-important elections will be able to collaborate and come up with something tangible for South Africans as a tangible alternative for South Africans remains to be seen. So we are really counting down to those elections. And also right now, it's quite interesting to see how the various political parties are adding the bells and whistles to their manifestos to ensure that they woo supporters and they woo voters ahead of that all-important election.
And concerning the ANC's suspension of Jacob Zuma, why is it just a suspension and not a full-out expulsion?
Well, that would be because the matter is yet to be discussed fully, and they're still, just trying to see how they would be going about it, because by the indication on how things look or stand at the moment, the indication would be that he would have to go through a certain procedure, disciplinary procedure, which is likely to only happen after the elections. So right now, they've decided to go with just this suspension for the moment, whilst just before they prepare for that disciplinary action, which is likely to happen after the elections.
Well, Arise News analyst Mxolisi Mansangon, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.